Hey there folks, this is GreenXI welcoming you right back to Let's Play Higurashi. Today we're going to be kicking off the fourth arc, the final question arc of Higurashi, and it is called Himatsubushi, or in English it's the time killing arc, and this is episode 74 if you've been following along with every arc and everything. But yeah, it's the last question arc. In the manga there was a fifth question arc, but I think they made that specifically for the manga. That was called the Beyond Midnight arc. I can't quite remember what happened in it. It can't be that important, can it? So, let's get kicking things off. Oh yeah, this arc is going to be very different from the other three question arcs in that we're going back into the past, and that's pretty much all I want to say, other than we're going into the past with a brand new main character. We're not going to be seeing Keiichi, unless they do things a hell of a lot different in the game. Let's have a quick look at how this is going to go down. Matsubushi, for you, the final mystery. Yep, it looks like it's going to be the final game. I now entrust you with all the mysteries hidden within Higurashi when they cry. However comical it may be, if you have reached any conjecture, then you have passed. This final novel is a meagre reward for you. Conjecture is impossible. You have the right to reject the story. But yeah, after this is going to be all the answer arcs. I've heard that should be quicker to come out, so maybe we'll get through the game a lot quicker than I thought. I don't know why, but it's just what a couple of people have been saying on Steam, so let's go! Oh, uh-oh. Creepy laughing. Who's the criminal, you ask? Don't we search for them in the story? Who's the criminal, you ask? Do you even know what the criminal did? Who's the criminal? Who is the criminal who will kill me now? Frederica Berncastle. Uh-huh. Another little riddle from Frederica. We don't even know who Frederica is yet. Oh, we want in this game, really. Midsummer, 1985. 1985, going into the past. I'd misread the time and ended up arriving too early. Oh, I do like this arc. The schedule board flipped with a series of clacks. My flight to Sapporo was still a bit later on. I still had over an hour before boarding. Well, I might as well close my eyes for a bit on that bench over there then. I came here directly from work, so maybe the fatigue from that was making me sleepy. Finding a suitable bench, I put my luggage on the seat next to me and settled down. Phew! I sighed like an old man. I'd hoped to stay young forever, but had become splendidly middle-aged. Well done, sir. Apparently, the rumour that even people in the latter half of their 20s experienced a decline in their physical strength wasn't a lie. It had been mind-numbingly busy at work lately, so I rarely had any time to myself. This might have been the first time I'd been able to enjoy a journey alone like this since I was a student. The reason behind this trip was to meet with an old friend. It was a bit strange to call him an old friend. In fact, it might be better to call him a bad one. Okay. After retiring a couple of years ago, he moved to Sapporo, his mother's hometown. His mother passed away soon after, and he was now peacefully enjoying his second lease on life. His name was Karudo Uishi. Uishi! He was a former detective from the Primary Investigation Unit at the station in Okinamaya, Prefecture. To be honest, the only direct contact we ever had didn't last more than 3 days. After that, we exchanged New Year's cards, but never met again. So this would be the first time meeting him in 7 years. In other words, we met 7 years ago, in 1978. There was something I just had to ask, to talk to him about concerning that time. To explain that, it was impossible not to recall the incident that happened back then. That kidnapping, the details and resolution of which were resigned to darkness. Also, it was impossible not to recall a certain mysterious girl. Come on, are we going into the past now? My name is Mamoru Akasaka. Mamoru. Okay. It was a year that had been strangely hot even though it was only June. So yeah, this is our main character for the arc, instead of Keiichi, because Keiichi wasn't around back in the past. He was quite new to Hinamizawa, wasn't he, during the arcs that we've seen. Early summer, 1978. Goodbye, teacher. Okay, bye. Watch out for cars. And don't drop in at a friend's house along the way. Make sure you get your textbooks in order for tomorrow before you go to bed. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The lively sounds of children running towards the hallway. Get out of school. Leg it. Hey now, didn't I tell you before? I already have one of those. I don't need any more. The unique, high-pitched voice of youth. The energetic shrill of the cicadas went completely unheard by their ears. Children returning home from school split off one by one from their groups of friends as they went through intersections in the residential area. Even though there were several of them in a group, as they left the school, as they got closer to their homes, their numbers dwindled, as you'd expect, I suppose. That's why the fewer friends you were walking home with acted as an indicator that you were that much closer to your destination. Later. See ya. Yeah, see you tomorrow. He finally parted ways with his last friend. A van was parked at a bend in the road. The window was open, the sound of the radio leaking outside. It must have been the news or something. For that reason, the three of them were arrested for traffic violations and obstruction of justice. Due to the protests against the Hinamazawa Dam project resulting in bloodshed when clashing with riot police last month, things have only become more violent. The police are therefore taking precautions against radical activists causing yet another incident. Last week, there was also a direct confrontation with Minister Inugai on the steps of the Ministry of Construction. The boys' ears perked up at the mention of the name Inugai. I can't even say it. At that moment, a man's face peeked out suddenly from the window of the van. His behaviour was a little different than that of a man looking around to see if there were any incoming traffic before he opened the door of his vehicle. His eyes meeting suddenly with the unfamiliar man, the boy panicked slightly. Nightingale, okay. Skylark, okay. They've secured the 2 blocks around us. Oh, something's going on. We're good to go. The man in the passenger seat whispered quietly. Nodding in acknowledgement, the man opened the door and stood before the boy. You. Are you Toshiki Inugai-kun? While asking that, the man peered at the boy's name tag. Toshiki Inugai. The name was written plainly there. What's he doing? The phone rang for a 3rd time. If he reached out, he could easily pick up the receiver. However, he was concerned that if he picked it up before it had even finished ringing once, whoever was on the other end of the line would think him a fairly cheap person. That's why he normally never picked up the phone till the 3rd ring. Even he thought it was a worthless habit. However, his thinking that there isn't much meaning in waiting for just 3 rings, wouldn't waiting for 5 be alright, was very much a reality. His mind filled with such trifling thoughts, he picked up the phone after the 3rd ring had finished, its reverb dampened by his action. Yes. Hello? 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 He knew that sometimes due to a malfunction at the switchboard, calls didn't connect well. At those times it was best to hang up and let the person on the other end call again. Thinking that, the moment he began to hang up on the phone, he sensed that he was definitely connected after all. He felt the presence of the person on the other end of the line, keeping silent. Hello? There was no way they didn't hear his question. What was the meaning of this? It wasn't like he didn't know that people could use silent calls to harass others. However, he'd never received a call like that until today. Maybe he was just lucky before, but he didn't believe that he would receive such a call on his phone. This is a really confusing opening. I mean, the boy got met by a man, and now there's some people on the phone. But there were no direct calls to or from this line. Everything had to go through an operator. Therefore, there was absolutely no way the call would be connected, unless it was verified there was somebody else on the other end of the line. That's why he didn't understand how to deal with this silent call, and instead settled into confusion. I didn't know who you are, but if you have nothing to say, I'm going to hang up. Please call again some other time. Intending that to be a parting line, he made to slam down the receiver. It was at that moment the person on the other end of the phone spoke for the first time. You didn't say who you were, so I was anxious. If you're not Minister Inugai, please hang up right away. He couldn't help but be surprised by the extremely strange voice on the other end of the line. Was there a human alive who could speak with this hoarse and metallic voice? No, this was a voice he had heard somewhere before. I imagine that's what he's saying it like. That was the kind of voice that was on those lowbrow documentaries that he'd use when they wanted to hide the identity of a speaker, wasn't it? The voice he was hearing over the line was exactly like that. Who are you? As I said, that's what I want to ask. Are you Minister Inugai? He, Inugai, hesitated to answer. Well, yes it is then. Unable to discern the intent of this suspicious phone call, he had a vague feeling that something was off. He thought about hanging up the phone and asking the operator who initiated the call. However, he forced himself to restrain that urge and for the time being chose to state his name and listen. That's right. This is Inugai. I said my name, now you say yours. my name doesn't matter. First of all, let's begin by thinking about the situation you're in right now. Right now, he's sitting in your chair, talking on the phone, yes? Then why don't you try opening the lower drawer to your right? The lowest drawer to the right of the minister's chair. There was a lock on it. Not enough to function as a safe, but nevertheless, it was a drawer that contained some valuable things. That's why Inigai thought that the person wanted some of the important information contained within that drawer. Sorry, but I don't have any intention of opening that. I have no reason to follow orders from somebody who won't even give me his name. If you don't open that drawer, I'll hang up the phone. You'll most likely end up regretting that. Why don't you think about opening that drawer first? Inigai didn't like following orders from this suspicious person one bit. However, he was concerned about what the man said about regretting it, so he decided to open the drawer. He took the small key he kept stowed in his wallet and then locked the drawer. His hand stopped right before he opened it. What if there were a bomb inside, and it would explode if the drawer was opened? That delusion took hold of him. He quelled that instinct and opened it. Did you do it? The thing that's in there, do you know what it is? This is... What's the meaning of this? Hey! I don't think there's any need for me to explain, is there? I'll give you some time, so please think about it a little. I'll contact you again later. Now then, pardon me. Hey! Wait! Hello? Hello? The call had already ended. That would not change no matter how much he yelled at it. Even still, Inigai, without realizing that, continued yelling into the receiver for a while. The drawer was still open. On top of the folders crammed into the drawer, it lay there. Toshiki Inigai, written in plain lettering on a grade schooler's name tag, just laying there. Enshrined there, completely out of place, as if it were cowering. This is a work of fiction, and resemblance to actual persons or organizations is entirely coincidental. So, Inigai's son, or Inigai himself, like however you look at it, has been kidnapped, and now somebody has called his father. And, you know, we're gonna see how that turns out. Do you remember Yuki? This picture? This is where I first proposed to you. That brief moment before you nodded back. You probably wouldn't know just how much it seemed like an eternity to me. Yes, I would have never thought that amount of time could feel like an eternity. A nice beach picture, to be fair. Compared to how long I had to wait for you to propose to me, it was... from the moment I met you until today, compared to the time I've spent since I was born, it might only be a brief period, but they were definitely precious, beautiful days that deserve to be called an eternity. That time continues even now. From now on, I wonder if it'll be a boy, or maybe a girl. Either one is fine. Boy or girl, either way it's living proof that we love each other. If it's a boy, we'll name it after you, Mamoru. If it's a girl, we'll put the Yuki from my name in hers. Thinking about names is so fun that in the end we still haven't decided yet. There's still time to puzzle over it. Not that long of a time, actually. You see, Yuki, there's something I have to apologize for today. It's my job. Sorry. Looks like an annoying bit of work has come up. In the worst case, I might not be able to be there for the delivery. It's fine. You have a very important job. What you do protects the way we live. Compared to you, it's nothing. Please go ahead. When you return, I'll be waiting here with our child. Thank you. Also, I'm sorry. Please don't apologize. If you feel guilty about it, then you can just atone. If I atone that much, no matter how much money I have, it won't be enough. It's a joke. Now, go on. So he's leaving his wife and soon-to-be baby to go on his job. As I left the room, I bumped into an elderly man. It was Yuki's father. In other words, my father-in-law. Father, I didn't want to intrude, so I waited in the hall. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I heard. Go. Yuki is that kind of girl. No matter what happens, she doesn't want to hold you back. I've forced Yuki to give up on so many things. To put her through this during childbirth, such an important time in her life, I'm ashamed. If you really feel that way, when you're done with your work, make some time for Yuki. She'll be happier with that than you passing your work off on someone else. It's a good father-in-law. Thank you. I know full well you do important work. Be proud in what you do. Yuki's looking forward to your triumphant return. Yes. Some father-in-laws can be all shouty about this sort of stuff. I jumped into the taxi that was waiting outside. Compared to the time when I first got here, the numbers on the fare meter had grown considerably. It seemed the modest time Yuki and I had spent together wasn't so modest from an objective point of view. Sorry to keep you waiting. Go ahead. No worries. Well then, off we go. The taxi jerked as it changed gears to accelerate, soon burying the hospital my wife was in behind a throng of buildings. I don't like how it says burying. If it was to end up as a really troublesome ordeal, I probably won't be returning for quite some time. To call a rookie like me, and on top of that, one who's off duty, it seemed that the section chief was calling for all hands on deck. The veteran upper brass gathering on an emergency basis happened occasionally. This was the first time though that I experienced everybody gathering together like this. Whatever was happening, there was no doubt it was going to be something novel. Oh, something special's going on. Right when my wife was ready to give birth. If I wanted to spend the time to curse my misfortunes, I'd be here all day. Even the verdant ginkgo trees lining the street that always brightened my mood seemed to lack some of their usual luster. Are the trees in the picture in the background actually called ginkgo trees? Are they actually what they are, or is it just trees for the sake of having trees in there? In the picture? I don't know. I don't know what a ginkgo tree is. There's so many new pictures in this arc, so it's nice. Eventually, the government office came into view, but I guess that's because it's all been in the village before, now we're seeing another city kind of thing. Briefly holding my breath, I let the feelings of tension course through my body once again. I had to remember the work I was doing was important, necessary, and difficult. I composed myself and sharpened my wit. Ready. The taxi stopped in front of the building. Okay, let's see just what's going on then. Couldn't have anything to do with Hinamazawa, could it? Kazuma Gaseki, Tokyo, Metropolitan Police Department, Public Safety Division. Just got it. Chief, everyone's here. Akasaka-kun, could you close the blinds? The blinds were usually closed when I needed to use the projector, or if the discussion was going to contain some particularly disturbing content. But yeah, we just saw, like, a location plaque go across the game as well, which is something we don't see in Hinamazawa because we've seen that area so much, I guess. Oh, the blinds closed with a satisfying sound, darkening the interior of the room. Immediately, the inside of the room was completely drained of the pleasant morning atmosphere, leaving behind only the cold illumination of the fluorescent lighting. After the supervisor ensured that everyone was present, he nodded to the section chief once again. With everybody on the edge of their seats, the chief stood up solemnly and began to give his report. Approximately 48 hours ago, the Minister of Construction's grandson, who was also the son of one of his staff leaders, is believed to have been kidnapped. Yeah, we saw all of that at the very start. It's believed the minister, in an effort to resolve matters amicably, chose not to report the situation to the police and plans to cede to the demands imposed upon him. It seemed that approximately 48 hours earlier, the Minister of Construction's grandson and those of his senior staff members were kidnapped, so that's who they were, the construction people. The reason why it was phrased that way was because the person in question didn't admit that it had happened. Based on the results of surveillance conducted on the minister's residence, multiple suspicious phone calls from what's believed to be outside the city took place. The abducted child is said to be under treatment for some illness, but there's no trace of any hospital records or witnesses to such effect. Due to that, and various other reasons, we believe without a doubt that a kidnapping has occurred. Here, they omitted the details that brought this incident to light. If you think about it a bit, that meant that before this incident happened, the minister's residence had been under surveillance already. I won't use the words spied upon. Of course, there wouldn't have been court approval for this, and it would have been very hard to explain to ordinary citizens. However, it was quite an effective method to catch wind of incidents like this before they got worse. I'd like for you to understand that dealing with these cases before they become a problem is the job of the Public Safety Division. Why is he just following their demands instead of reporting this to the police? The fact that the minister can't even trust the police, what's the world coming to? It seems the group of perpetrators demonstrated that they have quite a high level of surveillance on the minister themselves when they conducted the kidnappings. Enough to give the minister pause before calling the police. We'll find out right away if we call the cops, more or less. So it's possible that there's a mole close to the minister. Several of the higher ranking members who seem to have experience with this kind of thing let out deep sighs. The goals of the perpetrators, their demands, as well as this entire incident, are as of yet unclear. But in any case, the possibility that this may grow to threaten national interest is extremely high. If their goal was to simply have their demands met for monetary gain, that would have been nice. However, if this was some politically motivated shake-up, things would get a lot more complicated. Since we're not receiving any cooperation from the victim, that means that we're not privy to any of the details of the threats or demands. Due to the fact we believe there may be a mole involved in this incident, this investigation is highly classified. Only the people in this room are to know of this. Yeah, none of us, we don't know. Furthermore, as this case is our utmost priority, we'll be placing a hold on everybody's normal duties. Understood? After that, the supervisor continued on, tactfully explaining our course of action. If this incident were to become public, it was possible that the minister's political life would be over. I'll spare you the explanation of how the rest of the dominoes would fall, but in the end, support in the Diet would decline. The Diet? Followed by a no-confidence vote and a snap election. And it might even expand communist influences. In other words, we wanted to handle this delicately. Kawasaki and Saiki monitor communications from the minister and the child's residences 24/7. Find out what the minister is doing. Report anything that happens. The remaining members investigate whatever is related to the case as assigned to your units. Focus your line of investigation on the commies, reds and confeds. Don't discount the possibility of foreign involvement either. I've experienced one or two unamicable situations before. This, however, was the first time I've seen things get so hectic. Several sophisticated conversations were progressing without the involvement of a rookie like me. I didn't intend to be timid, but I couldn't hide my confusion at this unfamiliar situation. And cover that. As for Akasaka-kun, ooh, what are we doing? I snapped back to alertness upon hearing my name called. Yes! You investigate the environmental groups that have petitioned the minister. Among them, there's that group protesting the Hinamizawa Dam project that made the papers. Make sure you investigate them thoroughly. Funnily enough, something to do with Hinamizawa. I doubt this is the act of some citizen group, but we have to eliminate every possibility we can. Understood. So those opposed to the Hinamizawa Dam. It's probably best if you go to the location personally. Get some information from the local authorities. They're a fairly radical organisation, so the Public Safety Division there should have them marked as well. Understood. I'll head over there. Yeah, your wife, she's almost ready to give birth, isn't she? I apologise for the timing of all this, but I'm counting on your cooperation. We can't take our time with this, so we just have to brute force it with our boots to the ground. Yeah, I know. My wife hates to interfere with my work with her circumstances anyways. Sorry, and thanks. So then, as for Kawasaka-kun and Saiki-kun, to help support your... Yeah. I didn't want to take a business trip when my wife was about to give birth. Even if I was a little busy, as long as I was in Tokyo, I could head to the hospital right away. On assignment though, that would be difficult. Even so, I knew the work I was doing was important, and fully understood that I was in no position to be so selfish. I'd have to make it up to my wife for having to be away at such an important time. My wife, Yuki, would probably forgive me with a smile. She seems like that sort of person. The only thing she could hate doing would be holding me back. My male ego, though, at least wished she would have tried to stop me. Sorry, Yuki. I don't mind if you always complain to our child that their father couldn't come to the hospital when they were born because he was too busy with work. The next day, I took the bullet train to Nagoya, and from there transferred to the train to XX Prefecture. Getting to my destination by land took several hours. If I was travelling by air, in that amount of time I could probably get as far as Hong Kong. The prefecture was by no means close. I never sat in first class except for work, but whenever I did, the seats seemed stiff. In first class? Thought they'd be comfy. Closing my eyes, I mentally reviewed the documents I read yesterday. The group under investigation, the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance. They were a group of residents opposed to the development proposed under the Hinamizawa Dam project. The local protests were quite heated and were getting more radicalised. Even limited to what was written in the newspapers, there was bloodshed that occurred during a clash with riot police, interference with the dam construction, too many to count. The number of petitions, sit-ins, direct appeals to the relevant organisations were innumerable. As an extension of that, there was a direct appeal to the Minister of Construction the other day. This was the reason why we were investigating this group in the first place. The land that they lived on was going to be submerged, so it was no wonder they were going a frenzy over it. Well, yeah, they're going to lose their hometown and village and everything. Even given that though, could they really be capable of doing something like kidnapping the Minister of Construction's grandson in order to halt the project? I think that's a reasonable thing to do if you're going to lose your town. I mean, obviously you wouldn't hurt them and you treat them well and everything. It wouldn't be a proper kidnapping. For my take on it, I had serious doubts. This kidnapping plot was extremely sophisticated and complicated enough that it was believed there was some political backing. This wasn't something that could be pulled off by some group of local protesters. Well, just like the chief said, the plan was to eliminate all possibilities. While I'm in the XX Police's reference room, taking my time investigating, the higher-ups in Tokyo would probably solve the case, without my involvement entirely. Even if that was true, I couldn't regret being away from Tokyo while my wife was ready to give birth. This was work. There was really nothing that I could do. Ding dong! The announcement that we would be arriving at our destination soon snapped me back to wakefulness. Gogura, XX Prefecture, Prefectural Public Safety Division. The Onagafuchi Defense Alliance? Yeah, they've been quite active around here. The Prefectural Public Safety Department already had the documents and a cup of tea ready and waiting for me. The short of it is, they're a group of residents opposed to the dam. Really, it's probably better to say that every resident living on the land that's going to be submerged is rising to action though. Like the old saying, fight to the last, the determined and well-prepared lot. It'd be nice if they drew the line at just being a moderate residential organisation. The stack of papers they had prepared for me in the document room was by no means thin. At first, they were pretty much your average citizen's initiative, but ever since that incident with the riot police, they've really started to heat up. Now they've got a violent mentality, on top of growing increasingly radical. So they should. I'm not being funny, but violent organisations usually indicate ones that enforce their own ideology without regards to the democratic process. Breaking that down, many of those organisations held extreme left revolutionary ideologies. Considering that, I couldn't help but be surprised that a citizens group would end up going this far. Radical citizens movements happen occasionally. It seemed, however, that this group is nothing as trifling as that. It seemed that I would have to reconsider exactly what this Onagafuchi Defense Alliance was. The Defense Alliance's demand, in other words, the withdrawal of the dam project. How far would they go to have that demand met? The kidnapping of the minister's grandson was classified. That meant, of course, I couldn't tell the XX Prefectural Department about it either. As you know, there were arrests after last week's confrontation with Minister Inigai. There's enough reason to believe they could use illegal means to assert their demands. I skimmed over the list of the criminal records related to the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance recorded in the documents. The contents were all violent, not giving me the barest hint of the feeling that these people were trying to uphold the law. Could you give me a basic rundown of the types of illegal activities the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance are engaging in? The chief opened up a vanilla, fished out several unorganized sheets, and spread them out on the desk. It seems that raids on the construction site are the most common. At first they were committing relatively petty crimes like cutting power cords, jamming locks, breaking office windows by throwing rocks. Of course, what really happened first were things like demonstrations, sit-ins, distribution of pamphlets, lively but democratic forms of protests. However, then the demonstrators and police clashed, which started a riot, leading to numerous injuries and arrests. It was from then on that the Onagafuchi Defense Alliance, like their name implies, began to take a more demonish form of resistance. Oh god. If the raids were frequent, didn't the local police up their patrols? Well, of course they were on full alert, but they were up against locals, you know. There wasn't much the police could do if they were sneaking around under the cover of darkness. You might as well label the entire map of Hinamazawa village around the dam construction site enemy territory. Oh god. No matter how alert the police were, the locals would just show them exactly how easy it was to sneak around. Actually, it was after the police upped security that the protesters started getting ever more extreme, as though they were being provoked. See here? Can you tell how things started to heat up? An office set on fire. The destruction of heavy construction equipment. Destruction? They couldn't have used explosives. No way. You see, they crammed the gas tanks full of sugar cubes. If they do that, it fouls the engines. Even in Japan, it seemed there had been people doing that to the vehicles of occupying forces right after the war. Compared to misdemeanors like breaking windows, it was extremely violent and aggressive. After being toyed around with to that extent, the local police have completely lost face. The arson was a bit much. After that, the local police drastically increased the number of personnel they had stationed there round the clock. The raids on the construction site quieted down a bit after that. Use the words quieted down, but that was still smack dab in the middle of the list of crimes. See, after that, they found that attacking the site had become difficult. They started resorting to personal attacks. The first people targeted were the construction workers. Oh god, they're actually attacking people. After that, there was silence. What was being described to me was a guerrilla war fought in the jungle. Threats and violence against the workers. Harsh words and harsher rocks were thrown. There's quite a list of accusations here, but there's not a whole lot of convictions. Of course not. First of all, there's no witnesses. On top of that, even if we identify the perpetrators, they have alibis coming out of the woodwork. What do you mean by that? Take for example, you're walking around Hinamazawa when a certain man stabs you with a knife. Okay. You remember the person clearly, and even know his name and address. However, the knife doesn't have any fingerprints on it, and there's no other physical evidence. Well, you'd think this would be a run-of-the-mill case of assault, wouldn't you? In Hinamazawa, though, it's a perfect crime. Everybody is... the entire village, they're all in on it. To protect the man who is the perpetrator, they'll get their story straight and prepare an alibi. To that end, they'll probably even forge some evidence. There's nothing they can do but put them on trial. On top of there not being any material evidence though, people testify one after another to cover his side of the story. Any prosecutor would hesitate to file charges. Not sure about murder, but if it's something like opening a gash on somebody's forehead with a thrown rock, or leaving a bruise after hitting someone, even if you could single out the suspect, there's enough reasonable doubt to not convict. Every case is without a doubt perpetrated by someone in Hinamazawa, but they can't identify who. Even if they could figure out who it is, they're unable to obtain enough circumstantial evidence through due process. The villagers were all extremely well informed about this, and so the malicious, vicious, and tenacious personal attacks continued. The victims can't have been okay with that, right? Couldn't they have filed for an appeal? Well, you see, about that, everybody on the inquest committee didn't want to get involved with something so troublesome. They won't stick their noses into anything related to Hinamazawa, and have to have a drink. The inquest committee is comprised of a random selection of local residents. In the event the prosecutor fails to get a conviction, they have the power to order a retrial. It's a system designed to assert the will of the people on the actions of expert prosecutors in the legal world. In this case, however, being composed of a local residents has backfired. They don't want to get involved. Why's that? How to explain this? You could say they're afraid, since it's a little special there. Yes, we've seen in other arcs, haven't we, how close-knit all the people are and how they'll protect each other so much. Special? Is there an outcast community? No, it's a little different from that. Well, just think of it as them being afraid. It's a little hard to explain it just now. Alright, there's an easier way. Wiping his forehead with a handkerchief, he opened a file labelled as a list of members of the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance. The power of the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance, you see, is the fact that they count many people among their members who are influential in neighbouring areas. Could you take a look at this? I looked. What I saw startled me. Prefectural and municipal assembly members, staff members of the Chamber of Commerce, an executive of a business association, an executive of a town council association, and a PTA liaison. There are more than a few people with a lot of say both locally and in the neighbouring regions. Around here, you could pretty much expect your actions to be observed by those against the dam project. If you said something in its support, who knows how it'd work out to your disadvantage. In any case, every town in this area is being held by the throat by somebody from Hinamazawa. The list of Inquisition Committee members is undisclosed, isn't it? There has to be some measures in place to make sure they'd avoid retribution, no? Well, it's undisclosed, so the privacy is assured, but the person in charge of that is from the Okinamaya Municipal Office. In other words, a local. While you might expect some professional confidentiality, you can't know how everybody is connected. The people from Hinamazawa have a lot of tight bonds in that regard. When you consider the obligations and duties people have to the region, the web of information thereby formed is nothing to scoff at. It's not uncommon for housewives in the neighbourhood to know which kid from which house is what grade in which school, what subjects they're good at, and what vegetables they hate, among other things. You see, this is a Yakuza organisation here with strong ties to Hinamazawa and the surrounding area. It would seem that they're providing full support in these recent incidents. They seem to be proving most effective. Gangsters, siding together with the residents opposed to the construction of the dam. It's a little hard to see what their common interest is. It's not that difficult at all. You see, actually, one of the lieutenants in that gang is originally from Hinamazawa. He was adopted into a rather influential family in the village. Oh. Exactly what was this Hinamazawa? I thought it was some desolate rustic village, well, sort of. However, for some reason they exerted a strong influence on the surrounding areas and had a strong sense of unity. They would protect the village by any means necessary, even if that meant resorting to violence. The chief had said that they were afraid because there were numerous influential people living there, but somehow I got the feeling that they were afraid of the village itself. There was something clearly different from what I had read in the documents in Tokyo. This was no simple residential protest against the dam. For some reason, an uneasy feeling began to nestle itself at the back of my mind. I chose the most basic way to ask my question. In other words, I directly asked what I wanted to know. Chief, this is just a hypothetical situation, but... Huh? This Onikafuchi Defense Alliance, in order to halt the dam project, do you think they could, say, threaten somebody important to accomplish that? The chief replied immediately, it's possible. Truth be told, they've already gone to municipal and prefectural offices, as well as local offices of the Ministry of Construction, and done things that could be construed as intimidation. Several of the workers' families have also reported that they're being followed around by some suspicious people. Well, that would make sense. To halt progress on the dam, they raided the construction site, destroying heavy machinery and lighting the construction office on fire. If they didn't have any qualms about doing that, threats and violence against people related to the dam would probably be no problem. But that was it. Even your everyday hoodlum could use threats and violence. However, this time it was the kidnapping of the minister's grandson, an abnormally high-level crime. Not only was pulling off the kidnapping difficult in the first place, but so was manoeuvring to have the minister surrender to their demands immediately. There was no way this was the work of amateurs. Did these people have the power to enact this large of a crime? That was the heart of the matter. Was the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance an organization capable of pulling this off? In order to ask that question, once again, I chose the most basic method. Again, hypothetically, do you think they could kidnap a relative of someone of political importance? There's no way they could pull off something that big. That was the answer I most hoped for. If it was that answer, my work was as good as halfway done. I might be able to get back in time for my wife to give birth. That was how it was supposed to be. The chief, without a hint of hesitation, replied. They just might. There's no telling how far they'd go. Sorry, Yuki. Seems like my work wouldn't end so simply after all. Oh, shit. This is looking bad. Oh, Akasaka-kun. Good work. How's the information gathering at the XX prefectural office? It's coming along. It seems I'll be able to meet with their local public safety department, so I'm planning on heading out that way. How's the investigation in Tokyo going? The others are progressing along, but the number of groups we have to investigate are countless. Time isn't really a luxury here. There were no new developments at this time. No matter how suspicious the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance was, if they solved the case in Tokyo, my job was done. It looked like my wishful thinking won't come to pass. Hanging up the phone, I let my gaze drift outside the window to the valley of unfamiliar buildings. Akasaka-san, a car you can borrow just returned. I'll take you to it, so follow me. Ah, thank you. He showed me the elevator to the underground parking lot where a battered sedan was waiting for me. Oh, thanks. That the steering wheel kept drifting to the left was a little concerning, but it would be enough to get me around for a while. That can't be safe. My destination was Shishibone City, XX Prefecture. An area under the control of the Onikafuchi Defense Alliance. It is indeed. The Okinamaya police station was right on the front lines. Oh, and that's where we're going next time! Okay, so right now, he's just doing loads of research before heading in. And he's even sort of heading in. He's not going to Hinamazawa, but he's going, like, close to it, isn't he? So. Oh my god. Is that the end of the chapter, or is it just midway? Midway, okay. Okinamaya XX Prefecture, Okinamaya Police Station. So next time we'll check this out. This has been Greeny XI. Hope you've enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in a bit when we go for a bit more investigative stuff, I'm assuming. It's starting off a lot different to the manga, actually. It's going into a lot more depth and everything. The guy is finding out a lot about the place before heading in. Whereas I remember in the manga and the anime, he was sort of clueless going in, I think. And he found out a bit more from a certain character that you meet pretty much right away as he gets to the town, as he gets to Hinamazawa. So it is working out a little bit differently as far as I can tell. But I have been told it is still a shorter arc than the other three we've been through so far. So even though it's going into a lot of depth now, maybe as soon as we get there, it'll start speeding up a bit. I think the pacing is pretty good so far though, so I don't mind. So, you know, it's been a bit different. It's been very different from what we've seen so far, and that's a good thing. Anyways, thanks again for watching, folks. I'll see you again in a bit when we see just what else our guy can find out. See you in a bit, folks.